So this is a discussion about Magit. It's one of the ways to pronounce it. You can also say Magit. I went and looked online, and the current maintainer says that you can either pronounce it as in mums git or magic with the C changed to a T. He prefers either one, but since he's German, and I guess the original author, Marius Vollmer, he was also German speaking, so Magit would be probably most appropriate. But I say Magit because that's how I learned it originally. And that's how you'll hear me say it.
Also like magic, because magic, when you write it normally, it autocorrects it to magic, which is...
Yeah, and I think the original tagline was, it's Magit, as in like, it's magic. It is a Git interface in Emacs. It has enough functionality to free you from ever using the command line. So I hope to show you how that can be true. And it's nice to use. It makes a lot of the more arcane Git features actually easier to use. So there are some things that I'm not quite sure how to do with Git that I just use Magit for because it makes it easy to do. Otherwise, I'd have to know all the subcommands and the options and all that stuff. So I kind of just want to go over the basic usage. I'm not going to go into the deep, dark science or any of the configuration options of Magit, maybe one or two. The manual is excellent, and it's nicely laid out. So I'm going to recommend to everybody that if there's a particular thing you see here and you're totally fascinated by it, feel free to ask me. But there's also the manual, and you could go into further depth. So maybe take notes, identify things that are of your interest. We all start with Magit Status, and that's not by default bound to anything. The manual suggests, and I use Control-X-G for going to a Git repository, or Control-X-G, which then lets me type in the directory name at the prompt. But usually my mode of operation is to use dired to go to some directory, because I usually want dired that's at the root of my project, and I hit Control-X-G. And after some time, it will pop up and show me this buffer. And this is the Magit status window. And this is where you live when you use Magit. And it has various sections. It can have more or less sections depending on what's going on in your repository. We have a section here showing me untracked files. So the org file of this presentation is in this directory. And then it shows me that I have files that have some changes in it. Now, this interface kind of goes back to a much older mode. I don't know if you remember Darks back in the day. I guess there are people who still work on Darks, but there was a time when Darks was a noble competitor to Git, and it had this idea of everything being about patches. So the Emacs interface for Darks would present you with a buffer that was just a giant diff, and you would interact with that diff to say what you wanted staged and what you wanted unstaged and how to make your commit. And Magit took that UI paradigm. So if I go to any modified file and I hit tab on it, I get to see a diff of everything that's going on in that file. And if I move my cursor into a diff, you'll see that it goes into further word diff mode and shows me, it highlights what is actually changed in terms of words deleted or words changed. Down here, there are no highlights because it's all just brand new code. I'm sorry, code that I dropped out. But if I go down here, then those highlight. And this is dynamic. It can be turned off because it can get slow. Meta N and Meta P will move forward by whole blocks. Tab on an individual block will hide just that block in case you want to focus in on something. And then also, you don't have to go to something and hit tab. You can hit a number key on anything, and it will change its visibility level. So 1 is nothing's visible. 2 is the item is visible. 3 is there's a summary of its sub-items that's visible. And 4 is show me everything that's underneath here. And it works at whatever level I'm on. So if I'm on the file and I type 4, I see all the diffs for that file. But if I'm on unstaged changes and I type 4, it shows me everything that's in every file that's currently unstaged. And then if I use meta with those same numbers, it just applies it globally. So this makes the status buffer very easy to narrow down or to expand out to get to the information that you want to see. The other thing that you can do while you're in here is that I can press the, take this change that's up here. Let's go to 3 and let's just look at the second one. No, that's not what I want to see. was the one that had the deletion? I think that was the first one. Yeah, so maybe I want to do something with that first change, but I don't want that deletion to be part of my commit. There's two ways to do this. One is I could press the minus key, which says narrow down how much context each block's diff has. When I narrow it down enough, it starts to see these as two separate blocks. Plus, we'll increase the amount of context. Or I can just use a region around those edits, and now whatever key I press affects only that region. So if I were to type S, it would stage just that part of the hunk. And now I have a new section called Stage Changes, which shows me just what I've staged so far. And this works down at the level of a single line. Unlike normal Emacs regions, these regions include the line that you're on, which is why you see a little bit of a red border at the bottom of my blue bar. Might be hard to see with the highlight mode on, but so I could do just that one little change, and let's unstage that. So there, now I get down to that being just the thing I'm going to stage or unstage. S is how I staged it. U is how you unstage it. K will kill it, will delete it, make it go away forever. I can type capital U to unstage everything, capital S to stage everything.
Is now a good time for a question?
Yes, at any time is a good time for a question.
I like to do that. That's like my favorite thing about Magit. But I find that when I try to get a little too clever with it, when I actually go to stage those changes, it goes, oh, I can't do this particular combination of things that you've requested, and it just kind of aborts and returns everything to unstaged, I think. And do you know the rhyme or reason behind like why that sometimes works or doesn't?
It might just be that Git is rejecting it at the command line level, because all of these things are things you could do at the Git command line. If you say git add -p, it's add by patches, and it gives you a little REPL where you can name lines to be added to the index and lines to be taken out. So maybe it's just that is what's aborting. Yeah, I have run into that too, where it's just a little, or I will do a really fine distinction like, oh, I want this line and this line, but because of the way it gets applied, one of those lines is like all of a sudden 10 lines higher in the source code, and I'm wondering, how did it ever get that line all the way up there? But you know, it doesn't always work. So check the results to see if it's what you want. Let's go back to the, let's see here. This one is in window 2. We'll go here to window 1. All right. So another key that's very common to use in that buffer is G to refresh and capital G to refresh not only this buffer, but all the other Magit related buffers. So anything that is visiting a file that's under version control. So this is good for when you've gone and done some Git stuff at the command line or edited some files and Magit hasn't noticed. You can just hit G in here and it'll refresh. Two settings that you might find valuable are Magit save repository buffers and Magit auto revert mode. And this just means that if I change branches or I reset the index or I do something which ought to reflect a change in the working tree, Magit will revert all the files in the Emacs buffers that were visiting those things, which sometimes can get kind of slow, especially if you have a project with hundreds or thousands of files and you do some work tree changing thing like changing a branch, and all of a sudden you'll just get a huge number of messages down at the scroll bar saying reverting, 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 because it's trying to read in all these different files. But for smallish repositories, they can be quite handy. And then Q, of course, just makes the buffer bury. It's not gone, it's still there, but it just buries it. I talked to you already about display levels. Navigating sections, meta N, meta P, NP, they both work. You can jump to a section. So if I'm over here and I say JU, it'll take me to the unstaged changes. J at JS would have taken me to the stage changes. There's a ton of them. There's like 8 different J mappings. So I would recommend going to the manual to see them all. I guess I only have access to 5 of them at the moment. One of them is a prefix key. Oh, I see. jumping to pushed and fetched thing.
How do you do that in the mini buffer?
Oh, that is a mode called which key? Yeah.
Which key?
Yeah. Which key? You type a key and you wait, and if it has a key map behind it, it'll show it to you. All right, staging, deleting, more or less context. Magit Jump is a cute one. So if I'm on any file being displayed in this buffer and I hit Control-X, Control-J, it'll take me to the DIRED of that directory and put my cursor on that file. Because now from here, I can do other crazy stuff that maybe I wouldn't do from Git. Renaming files, although Magit does have a rename command, moving files to another place, etc. Diff settings, if I type capital D in the Magit buffer, then I get a pop-up menu. And this is a UI modality that Magit makes use of a lot. There's even a separate mode that it implements called Magit Popup to provide this functionality. But when a key would just be able to do too much and there's no way you'd remember all the prefix arguments, it pops up a buffer and it allows you to make customization choices with the equals or minus flags and then choose the subcommand that you want to do here. So I could, like just as I did plus and minus to increase the number of context lines, I could have instead said capital D equals U, and then down there where you can't see it, it's prompting me for a number. And I could type 6, and now it says 6, and now I type G, and it refreshes, and I have 6 lines of context. So this just gives me access to all the things I might display without changing the view until I refresh. So I can just like set up what I want to have the diff look like for the next command that I run. Change the diff algorithm, ignoring submodules. There's a lot of stuff here. So this is one of those go to the manual if this excites you type things. If I do lowercase d, I do of course see a diff here. But sometimes I don't want to just look at it here, or I want some other aspect of the diff without changing my status display. Because I might have 100 files changed, and I only really want to focus in on a different view of this diff. So if you type lowercase d, it pops up a menu with many of the exact same options as capital D, but now it's going to run the diff and give you a different buffer with just the diff for that file. So it's just like typing git diff at the command line. A common one you might want to do is like dr to diff arrange, and I might say like origin master ... my branch, which says show me the difference between what's in my branch and where master was when I branched off of it, rather than the difference between my branch and current master. So you can still make good use of some of Git's features like diff range naming from Magit. If you're in a diff, like let's go to a diff buffer here, and I'm looking at, I don't know if this works in Emacs list, but if I type Control-C, Control-T here, it's not working in, it's not working here. Let's see if we can go somewhere else. Let's try the HNix repository. We will have to edit some code in here. Let's go in here. Very, very slow on this laptop. Okay, Princehold. Yeah. Okay, so now I go to my buffer. I look at my modification, and I type Control-C, Control-T. And what I'll see up here is a history of all the commits that changed that definition. So I can very quickly be looking at the diff of a function and say, what have the changes to that function been recently? To go from that context to that answer in command line Git is actually a bit of an effort because you have to use a special command line switch to name the function that whose definition you're interested in, whereas Control-C, Control-T will just pick it up from context, and it works from either the diff buffer or from the status buffer.
Oh my God, it can do this? Git can do this as well?
Yeah, Git has this functionality. Yeah, if you look at the man page for Git log, there's a zillion things. Yeah.
Oh,
How does it know the function? You like a piece of code? Like,
Yeah, it must get it wrong though sometimes.
Yeah. In Emacs list it gets it wrong. But in
how does it
Haskell
know
it
what
gets
a
it right.
function is?
Set regular expressions.
Probably regex. Yeah, you can do git log -s with the regex, right? So you can just go through the whole history.
Yeah, you can go by string, by regex, but you can also go by some contextual information too. I mean, you've noticed perhaps that when you do diff will highlight the hunk with the name of the function that that hunk is referring to. So there is somewhere in the background of all this diff computation, somebody's paying attention to known regex for common languages.
I mean, it's brutal.
Amazing.
It's just heuristic.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it just feels the blame on it and starts following the history of it.
Okay.
That's how it implements it.
Yeah, somewhere some programmers very happy we noticed. The other thing you can do is if your cursor is on a diff, any diff really, we'll go back to this diff, and you type Control-C, Control-E, that means I want to edit that thing that I'm now looking at that's under my cursor. And where that gets interesting is that depending on context, that thing may not actually live on your hard disk at the moment. That may only live in history. And it may only live as the result of rebasing history because of where you're at in your view of things. So Magit is actually smart enough to do the right rebase command to produce the temp file that contains those contents so that you can edit it. And then you can stage from there and it'll make a new commit that'll represent those edits in that file. So it just helps with being able to go from a diff to diving into working on that thing that you're looking at. We did range diffs. Okay, and then Edith is one of my loved tools here. So Edith will just basically let me look at this information using Edith, which I sometimes really prefer because I have a view of the current, what's in my, what's at the head of the current branch in the top, so that would be master right now. What's in my index and what's in my actual file. So now I can very quickly see what's been staged, what hasn't been staged, what's the difference with the head. From here, I can actually stage and unstage as well. So Magit is adding some commands into Edith so that you could do staging and unstaging in here. And there's a lot on this in the manual. So that's what Edith does if you're just doing it on a modified file. If you do it on a file that needs a merge resolution, it's 4 panes. And it'll show you current head, your index, working file, and common ancestor. So you can very quickly see all the context that you would need to know what should the resulting code in that little diff block be. Yeah, so capital ES is for using Edith to stage changes, and there's actually quite a few. Yeah, you can ask it for different things. You can even Edith against against a stash, in case you're curious as to what's in that stash and you want to see that with Edith. Visit thing, just like Control-C, Control-E, usually pressing return on anything will take you to that thing. So if you press return on a commit, it will show you the contents of that commit. If you do it in a diff block, it will take you to a file editing that piece of code. If you take it to a ref, it might check you out that branch. It's trying to do the smartest thing it can to get you to the entity you just pressed return on. Another thing you can enable, which is not enabled by default, is global Magit file mode. And what global Magit file mode does is it gives me the ability to do certain things that are Magit related from within the code file. So if I wanted to stage all the changes that are in this file and then commit, I can do that without leaving the file. I don't actually have to go to the Magit status buffer. I can just do whatever you bound it to S and then whatever you bound it to C, make the commit right then and there. It also works for logging, works for blaming, diffing, other common things you might want to do. And then there's the Magit dispatcher, which the manual recommends to Control-X meta G. And this will, from anywhere, jump into a Magit subfeature that we've talked, some of which we've talked about and some we will. So merging, pushing, fetching, diffing, all the things related to your project. So you're sitting in your file and you're going, oh, I need to pull the latest master. This would be the quickest way to get Ignore is just letting you relating you to, so I could say, oh, I'm never going to check that in. I'll just hit I, and then it says, do you want to ignore it locally or globally? So just add stuff to your git ignore or to your git info exclude file. One of the two. Or you can type capital K, and then like say I have this change in init.l. Well, let's say I'll stage everything, and then I'll unstage this guy. But I don't want these changes to ever be committed. So I can type capital K and name the file, and now Git will just ignore changes I've made in that file. It'll act like it was never changed. I have to undo that, of course, if I ever do want to check in the changes to that file. But it can be handy, especially when somebody commits, I don't know, some .envrc or something, and they use some weird debug flag that you never want to see used. And so you want to just delete it from your copy and not be annoyed by a modified flag all the time. Reset, X and capital X. X is the soft reset. That'll just say, you know, just basically pop off commits and put it back in my working tree. Capital X goes to the full-on submenu of all the things you could do, soft, mixed, hard. This feature I use all the time because I will commit something and then realize, oh, I don't want to commit all that, or I made the wrong commit. Rather than amend it, which I could do, I'll just type little x and say head caret and just pop off that commit and get back to where I was. And of course, it'll go into the staged section of the index. Capital R just gives you a way to rename from Magit if you don't want to do it with your end. Committing. Okay, so one of the important things that you will be doing. So let's say we change this, and I want to say, I type, let's go back to that. When I type lowercase c, I get this menu of a lot of things I could do. I can commit, I can extend a previous commit, which is amending it without a message. I can fix it up, which is only changing the message. I can squash it into, I don't know how far back it goes. It might ask you for a base. Instant fix up, instant squash. You can reword, you can augment, all in the manual. You can also have all these little options here for allowing an empty commit or disabling the hooks just for this commit, which can be handy if you have a really long pre-commit hook. But I hit C to go make my commit, and now I'm in this buffer up top, which sort of gives me the status summary of what this is going to do. And then at the bottom, I get to see the diff of what's going to go into this commit. So I can preview it down there as well. And up here, I have access to some other keys, which are, what are they? There are keys I can type here. Yeah, if I type Control-C, Control-A, I get act by, Control-C, Control-T, tested by. These are for if your project uses those common Git labels that you can add to them. There's maybe 8 or 9 of these, and they're all in the manual. And then Control-C, Control-C will send it off. Control-C, Control-K, like with most Emacs modes, will cancel it. T will make tags instead of commits. Usual, not so sexy, but. B is my access to the world of branches. So here I can type BB to check out a branch, BC to create a branch, basically make a new branch and check it out at the same time. BN to just make a new branch but not check it out. B capital W to make a work tree, although there's another way to make work trees that I'll show you in a moment. One of the coolest things about these features that I like is BS, create a new spinoff. And what that does is I'm on the master branch, I've made 3 commits, and then I realize I'm not ready to push that to master. That really needs to go into a pull request, and so it should live on its own branch. BS will take everything that's new since you diverged from remote, make it a new branch, and then reset the previous branch to what it was at the time, at the revision of remote. So it'll basically just take those 3 commits, give them a new name, and restore my master branch to what it was. And does it with 1 key. It's very, very nice. You can also check out pull requests, though I think you need to set something up so that it knows how to check out a pull request. And then I can delete branches, but there is an easier way to delete branches. So I recommend reading up on that because there's a lot of sub commands in that. So yeah, PS is what I love. So work trees. % is the interface key to work trees. So I use work trees a lot. Work trees are kind of like mercurial style branching where you work on a separate work tree. You have a different branch, but it's in a different directory and it has its own checkout. But all your work trees share the same repository. So if you fetch in one, all of them see it. If you make a stash in one, all of them see it. And so what I have in my work directory is our main mono repo is in this directory called dev. Then I have a directory that's sibling to it called topics. And in topics is every PR I have in flight because I want to be able to run tests and have the build products not overwrite each other. So when I'm in my dev repository and and I'm looking at master, I'll just type %c. It'll ask me for where I want to make it. So I might say like foo in my DL directory. What branch do I want it to start at and what do I want to call it? I'll call it John W. foo. And then it will take me to a Magit status buffer over there, which is on that branch and is ready for me to start making commits there. And if I go to push it, it'll automatically push it to that branch name at my remote after asking me for my remote. I'm sorry you can't see the very bottom of that screen, but it says origin there. Using work trees from Git command line is a little bit more cumbersome. That's how I used to do it because I like the functionality of work trees so much, but I have found since discovering that Magit can do it that this is a very quick way to make work trees and also to check out a branch into a work tree. And I believe even, yeah, show the status for a work tree because Git knows where the work trees are located. And it can jump you over to that work tree. So I can say, oh, show me this one. Oh, wait, I want to see that foo one. And then it'll just pop me to the different work trees. Okay. If at any time you wonder what just happened or why is Git taking so long, hit $, and it will take you to a buffer that shows everything that's been happening. All interactions with Git get logged to the Magit process buffer. And $, takes you to the Magit process buffer. And this process buffer has its own set of key bindings where you can use tab to hide things. And you see in green and red here what the status result codes were. It didn't like me aborting those 2 commits. This can be very handy. It's especially handy when you start checking something out and it needs to download 300 megabytes and you're wondering when is that ever going to finish. Just watch it in that buffer. If you type K in that buffer, it'll kill whatever Git process it's currently running. So that's easier than doing PS to find the process ID or typing kill all. Capital P is the push interface. A lot of sub options here, but usually the most common is capital P, lowercase p. I have capital P, capital P. That's just my own personal key binding I added so that I could just bang it, smash it. That used to be in Magit, but the author decided that too many people were getting confused and they were mashing that without really understanding how it was different from capital PU, because he distinguishes the push remote from the upstream. Sometimes the upstream is where on GitHub you want to pull new changes from, whereas the push remote is where you want to push your changes to make your pull request. So for my workflow, it's almost always the upstream that I want to push to, so I have PP defined to that. But you can also push to another branch. You can push an explicit ref spec. You can push tags. So. Any more questions, by the way? You just all absorbing this?
I have a question for when you get to Rebase.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I'll hold it to then.
I
We
just had a
picked the
comment
hardest section.
about the commit message. When
Yeah.
you kill it, one of the handy things Magit does is it keeps it in its own ring. So that
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you can do meta up.
Meta N and meta P, you can go back and forth in your commit message history.
Oh, wow.
What?
So we go over here and we say CC to make a commit message. And if I type meta P, I'll go back through the past commit messages I had, even if I canceled them.
So there's a separate kill ring just for the commit messages.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that feature all the time, so I'm glad you mentioned that. It's especially nice if you wrote a big long commit message, you did the commit, then you realize, oh wait, I had to use reset to pop it off, now I want to make it again, but oh, I want that same thing I just wrote. Well, it's there, it's in your kill ring as long as you haven't exited Emacs or you're using one of those persistence modes that saves ring content. So fetch, we'll just fetch stuff down. I use just FA almost exclusively, never used any of those other sub options. Capital F is pull, so it's like power fetch. Not too many sub options. Submodules, so if you type O, you have access to the a lot of stuff here for interacting with submodules, synchronizing them, updating them. It kind of shows you what it's going to do there if you're familiar with the submodule interface. Subtree, if you do capital O, now you can do adding in a subtree, merging in changes. So subtrees, if you're not familiar with them, are basically equivalent to submodules, except you pull the commits into your own repository's history. So it's kind of like you can rip a submodule out. No, if you rip a subtree out, that takes only its history, its own history from your history, and you could make a submodule from it. You can go the other direction. You can take an external repository and you can stream it in. What I used to do for my Emacs configuration was to avoid other repositories disappearing, I subtree added in every single project I ever used, which made me have no submodules, which I liked. But there's a little bit of work here if you want to create a pull request out of subtree contents. Not impossible.
All right. Submodules I find in Git like kind of painful. Does Magit make it easier to deal with all of the kind of weird things that Git submodules
I don't think
have?
there's any solution.
Yeah, there's no solution.
Oh, okay.
There are things you can do in Git itself which are not default. One of them is the configuration option submodule.recurse, which says anytime you pull, recursively pull submodules too. It makes things a little slower, but it also means you can never pull and not have also pulled and updated your submodules.
It is a security risk, so do it with caution.
Yeah, thank you. And then there is diff, ignore submodules that are dirty. Or is that, or do I want the one that's on push? Or maybe it's the one on diff. Oh no, yeah, it's push.recurse submodules check, which will prevent you from pushing a commit that refers to a submodule whose commits are not accessible on the internet. So then you don't have people coming to you saying, did you remember to push in foo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that one has saved my life a lot. Okay. Merge is you hit M and you can merge other branches into your merge or do fun mergey stuff. Rebasing. Okay, R lets you rebase. And you can either do rebase, just normal rebase of a branch onto your, rebase your branch onto another branch, or you can type RI. And RI will bring you up with a recent history, and you can move yourself to the commit where you want to begin doing the work and hit Control-C, Control-C. Yeah. Cannot rebase, you have unstaged changes, so let me just stash this stuff away. Now let's rebase. I will get the stashing. All right, so then I get presented with this buffer, which actually is just Git presenting me with this buffer. This is not Magit. But in here, I can like type S to say I want to squash one commit, or F, I want to fix up a commit, or you can just type Control K to say I want to drop a commit. You basically, and also, of course, reordering. You can type F and V. Oh no, not F and V. What is that way? Meta N and meta P to move these lines around. And then when you get the history into the form that you want it rewritten into, then you type Control-C, Control-C. Git will start rebasing it, and if it runs into conflicts or anything, it will pop you into a Magit status buffer where you will see this sequence where all the ones it could do successfully are marked done, and it will stop with a red marker on the one that it couldn't complete because it needs your interaction. It will want you to resolve the conflicts, which you can do with Edith. And then when you're done resolving them, you just use the R submenu again to either continue or skip or abort. And just keep doing that until you complete your rebase. Rebase question?
Oh, yes. So this is something that I've just have lived with, but I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. But I find when when you get to this thing, you do RI, that when I start with the repo, it's lightning fast, and then slowly it just gets slower and slower and slower. Everything else is super snappy, but just this rebase interactive part, I feel like it's reading something, loading something, it's doing something. I don't know what. I don't know if you've experienced any slowdown ever, but maybe not. Never mind.
Yeah, I think I've just gotten inured to slowness because a lot of the stuff I do with Emacs and Magit is all slow. So no, I don't know in particular what causes a progressive slowdown on Rebase unless others have ideas from their own experience. Yeah. So the quick fix up Rebase, RF, or sometimes just use Control-C, Control-E. So Z gets you to stashes. So I already made a stash, so let me unmake it here. I have changes. I want to just push them off to the side. I hit little Z. I can do a lot of stuff now. I can hit little Z again and just save it off to a stash, and it will remember what was unstaged and what was staged. I can stash it to a branch. I can stash it to a patch. I can type capital Z and it will just snapshot it, which means stage it and unstage it, but keep the stash and just name it based on when I created it and what commit I created it from. Which I like to do that at the end of the day if I'm not ready to make commits, just so that I have that work in Git's repository. And there have actually been times in the past where I have had to do data archaeology and find the raw blob that contained a bit of code that I knew had been written, but nothing referred to anymore. And Git hadn't garbage collected it yet. And we were able to recover the function that someone had written because it was there. At some point, some tree or commit had been made that had that code in it. And then you can pop stashes here. If my cursor is on a stash, or, and this works for a lot of things, if I type A, it will apply what's in that stash to my working tree. Capital A will apply it and get rid of the stash. So that's sort of funny. So let's say I type K here.
Different from pop.
Yeah, that is pop, capital A.
Oh.
Yeah. But you'll also use the A and the capital A in some other contexts too.
Okay.
But there we go. I got my stuff back. Okay. So snapshots. Remotes, if I type capital M, I can now interact with my remotes. I can remove them, add them, rename them. Basically just saves you from having to run the Git command. At any time, I can type colon, and it will ask me for the arguments to Git in whatever directory this status buffer is for. So if you have some special Git alias in your .git config that you're used to using and you just want to use it from a Magit buffer, colon is the quickest way to just run that alias. I already talked about Edith to resolve conflicts. Okay, the log. So L has a ton of options. A lot of them are overlapping with the options for diffs. LL will just give me my regular old log. If I type capital L in here, I have more options that relate to what it is that I'm seeing. So capital L will get rid of that margin that was on the right that was showing me my name and the age of the commit. I can also, let's see here, I can, oops, I want it back. I can capital L, little l, and change how the display looks of the date. And then I can also get rid of the names details. And all of this is configurable as to what it's displaying in the various columns. So if you have a particular flavor of information you like to see in these log buffers, you're welcome to configure that. And I can change whether I'm seeing a graph, whether that graph's in color. There's no graph here because I'm the only person working on this and I'm not using branches. If you want diff stats, if you don't want diff stats, go ahead and turn on diff stats. Where did diff stats go? Oh. Got right there. And this works in actually several buffers, this capital L, not just in the log buffer. So yeah, I already talked about that. Applying, we mentioned that. Branches and refs. So this is a very useful feature that I miss when I'm in command line Git. Usually I will type git branch minus VA to get an idea of what all the branches are on a project. So in Magit, I type Y and I go into this refs browser. And the refs browser is relative to the ref that's at the top line. So everything it's showing me in this buffer is in some way relevant. It relates it to head. You can change what that is. You can say, I want to see how all of these things have diverged from, say, origin master. So let me see if I yeah. So after pressing Y to get in there, I press Y again. I pick another branch. I say origin master. All right. Now you see there's an @ sign next to master. I lost the star that was next to this guy who was matching head. And now I have an @ sign here telling me that my top guy matches what's in this remote. And then I can say, let's see, is it capital L? Yes, it is. It's always capital L. There we go. Now I can see information about who made those recent commits. Show commit counts for all refs. Now this slows things down. That was that was capital L V to change the verbosity, and I asked it to show me all refs. So this is showing how many commits ahead or behind of the commit mentioned in the top line are all of these refs. And that's just, it's quicker for me to get that information from here than it usually is from command line. So now I know that my headmaster is 2 commits ahead, and that this guy, pull request 14, is 1,788 commits. It is behind origin master. Oh, and then when you're in the Y browser too, from here, you can type K to kill refs. If you type K over here, you will kill local branches. If you type K here, you will kill remote refs from your server. This is usually how I get rid of dead branches. And now Charities. This is a cool feature. I only just discovered this feature myself, but I made use of it today. So what Charities are, and it's not necessarily related to cherry picking. What that says is, you type capital Y and it wants a cherry head. Let's say I'm on a branch. I have some branch named foo. And I've been doing a lot of work on this branch, but I've also been merging from origin master into my branch. So if I ask for the log that's the difference between my branch and where we diverged from origin master, I see all those merge commits. And if I ask for the diff between my branch and current origin master, I don't see all my commits, I just see the diff. Cherries are just the commits on your branch that have no correlate in the base branch that you ask it for. So let's say I have 3 commits in my branch. I made a commit, I made some other commit, I made a third commit. In the meantime, somebody said, ooh, I really liked what was in that second commit of yours. I'm going to cherry pick that into master today and push it. If I ask for cherries, I will only see the first and third commit. I'll see nothing that is already up there. And then let's ask for it right now. We will get cherries relative to, we'll get master's cherries relative to origin master. So in this list, if it has a plus, that means it's new work. If it has a minus, it might mean that it's already there. From here, I can use capital A to apply stuff into my current working tree. I can hit return and go visit this commit and look at it. I can do all the things that you would normally do. And then, of course, as usual, capital L will change visibility and show detail and all that kind of stuff. So this is a very good way to look at what exactly is the novel work represented in this branch that I'm currently working on. Getting out of your view all those merge commits and other noisiness. If you were to rebase with master, this would be your log. Oh, I have an example to show you. It says, show them origin enable GHCJS. So let's go to HNIX. Let's look at the master branch relative to GHCJS. There. This is all the work that people have done on that branch that I have not seen make it to master yet. Revert, as the name suggests, if you're on any commit in any view that's showing you something that looks like a commit, you can type capital V and you'll get prompted with, do you want to revert the commit or do you just want to revert the changes that are in that commit? So don't make a new commit. Just undo in my working tree what that commit contained. You can sign it with GNU PG. That's fine. Commands, so I mentioned colon to run a quick git command. You can also type bang to get a few more options. So you can run a git subcommand in the current directory that you're looking at, or you can type it, or it'll be relative to the whatever line you're on in the list of files. Or you can say, do it from the top directory of my git. Or you can do bang bang, which says, or no, bang s, which is run a shell command from the root of my git project. Or you can run git k or git GUI. And then capital T gives you access to git notes, that feature that I'm not sure anybody uses. Anybody ever used git notes before?
What is this?
So git allows you to locally attach information to a commit. Because it's only local, it doesn't change the hash of the commit. You have to actually jump through hoops to push this thing to a place that somebody else could pull it. And they have to jump through hoops to be able to pull it and see it. It's more for you to take notes on a commit.
That's the commit message's purpose.
Not
Sort of.
quite.
What about code review? Right?
Like, let's say that I'm pulling commits and I'm running builds and I want to save the output of the build log for every commit that I pull and build. Other people have different build logs because they have different machines. They don't care.
So
But
you-
I'm doing it for my own data archaeology.
I see. So you would just shove it into the tag, maybe, or some release, right? Into that.
Well, you don't want to make, if you make an object out of it that's immutable, that's going to get pushed up and other people are going to see it. Git notes are really mutable metadata. It's like-
Associated with a commit?
Associated with a commit. And it can contain whatever text you want it to contain. And in fact, you can classify them and have different flavors of notes, and Git will segregate them for you.
The build log example is great.
Yeah.
Definitely nails exactly what I would use it for.
Yeah, I think at one point I had the automated build server out on CI, just annotating notes onto a commit, and then I had changed my .git config to pull the ref you need to pull to get access to those commits. And then when I was offline and working on something and I would look at a commit, I would be like, wait a minute, well, what did CI look like when it ran the test for that commit? And then it was right there, and I had it. But like I said, you have to jump through hoops to get it to work the way you would probably want it to work. And it's all documented in the Git Notes man page. But Magit, nicely enough, gives you access to it. So you can edit Git Notes from here. Like, let's say I want to go to this commit, capital T, capital T. I'm going to edit a commit, a note for origin master. I just make a note. Hey, this is a note. And there it goes. And then I'm sure there's somewhere, some way in here to get a view of my notes to see them. I don't use Git Notes. Capital B gets you access to bisecting, which if you've never used it, is one of Git's serious power features. Just if you haven't used it, has anyone here not used bisecting yet? Is your life ready to be made much better? So you pull, things break. If you use Nix, this is your life, right? You wonder, what bonehead broke Nix for Mac? Whenever I pull and I build all of Nix packages, I create a branch label called, sorry, I'm not doing this in Magit, I really should, but this is such a large repository that's incredibly slow. So I have a branch called last known good. Oh, you're not seeing it because I'm not sharing my screen. All right, we're gonna suffer. Go through this. this slowly. This is where I get T.
Okay, now I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, this repository
Large
has
repos
like
can be slow.
110,000 files in it or something like that. All right, we go to the refs browser. All right, so here's last known good. Every time I pull Nix packages and my entire package set builds, I update this ref with what that commit was. Then I pull today into the master branch and I go to build it and it breaks. Pandoc is now not building. Who broke it? I want them to know so that I can get, either I can make the fix or I can report the bug correctly. I type git bisect. Well, I know what the last known good state was. So I type git, or I use capital B up here, use BG for telling it what was good. No, I have to start a bisect. Let's bisect it with last known good. That's the good one, and the bad one is master. The good revision has to be an ancestor of the bad one. Oh, that's unfortunate. All right, so that's not working. Anyway, you type capital B, and it will ask you the last known good. Then it will ask you, what is the commit you're having the problems with that's bad? Then you can say, capital BR, give it a shell command, which returns 0 if it works and 1 if it doesn't. So it's nice with Nix packages because I just have to see whether it builds. I mean, it's slow, but at least it's just one command, Nix build my environment. Nix will chug off, Git will chug off and do a binary search, bisecting to find the offending commit. And it will find it within, log n, log base 2 of n, of the number of commits that have differed between last known good and master. So there are times when it takes 6 hours to do that work, but when it's done, I know exactly which commit broke the build. And it's always relevant information. Good hygiene in Git is important to keeping bisect working well. If you follow the principle that all commits on master must build and pass CI, Git bisect is your total friend. But if people commit and push broken stuff, you have to then cleverly make your git bisect run command insensitive to all the other things they might have done wrong. And sometimes you just have to do it manually. If you say what was good and what was bad, Git will say, well, I'm going to have to test at least 11 commits. It's going to check you out and put you in a working tree at the first one. And then you just say good or bad, good or bad, good or bad every time. And then you can run whatever commands you want, edit whatever files, do whatever you need to do to make that determination. And within log base 2 of n, you have your answer. So Magit also has a nice interface for doing this. And I wish I could see it. Well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's say that good was master 10 commits ago. Good revision has to be an ancestor of the bad one. Am I doing this in reverse?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Oh yeah, the master. Okay, let's do that. Let's do master with last known good. Let's do master with master 10. Yay, it's taking time. There we go. So it's telling me that I'm going to bisect roughly 3. I'm going to have to do whatever I need to do 3 times because there are 9 revisions for it to test. This is all the stuff that's remaining. So one side of this will be bad and one side of it will be good. And then there's my log of what has happened. And then I can use capital B as my interface here to mark good, bad, skip it, or reset, which says go back. I don't want this bisect. And then MetaX Magit blame is another tool that works nicely inside here. Let's see, I can blame myself a lot in this file. Type Magit blame, and it is just a blame mode. It shows you who was the last person that changed. Not yet committed. Well, that's kind of clever. I hadn't even seen that before. And then it creates, it's a minor mode, and it creates some bindings for you to like type Q to make this go away and such. But sometimes that's nice for just, if you're reading a function, who the heck did that?
I have a question here. Is there a way we can do this in the format of VC annotate, where you have names and the names in one column and code in another column?
Yeah, just run VC annotate.
So, like, can we do this in Magit?
I mean, Magit is not incompatible with VC. So I personally just use VC commands when they're more convenient. Like if I want to see the contents of this file in origin master, I'll just do Control U, Control X, V tilde, go to origin master, and then just there, I'm there. I mean, I don't really have to use Magit for everything. Or Control X, V equals is sometimes quicker than Control C, meta G, D. I mean, that's roughly equivalent, but I don't know, it's whatever you're used to.
Well, if you just run Magit Blame, Emacs Magit Blame.
Yeah, or you can, or if you have the Magit file mode, it's Control C, meta G, B.
I mean, it says, yeah.
And then this feature that I have never used before, didn't even know it existed, probably still will never use. If you type capital W, you can make patches and send them to people. And if you type lowercase w, you can apply patches and get them from people. Okay. And last but not least, if you're sitting here and you're wondering what can Magit do, just type question mark or H, and you will get the master dispatcher, which will take you to all the other Magit Popup sublevels. So you may forget that R is for rebasing, or well, probably you'll forget that M is for remoting, because I forget that, or that T is for notes, but all there.
So if you get lost, you want to start from here.
Yeah, this is your one-stop shop.
How does the hierarchy beneath it work?
How's the hierarchy?
Hierarchy, I mean, like each of those is a command and has properties.
Uh-huh.
And then all of those same. And then those, like,
Some things are
it
shallower
just
than
like
others.
goes down,
Yeah, it's
right?
like a tree.
It's just a tree.
Yeah, it's just a tree.
Okay, that's it.
Like if I hit L here, I go to this guy. If I hit L here though, I actually have run the command, so it doesn't go any deeper. But there are other sub options under log that I could have done. And if I do L, LB, then I can see all my branches, which it's not very interesting in this repository, is it? Go here. Oh yeah, look at, got a nice little graph. But you know what? I love my graphs to be in color. Hey. Ooh. And then you may notice I've got pull requests as a section, and I've got issues as a section. That's because people have written add-ons to Magit. And this one is called Magit Hub. Oh yeah, and it gives me direct access. I can hit tab on this guy and see information about this pull request. And if I type W, it'll launch me into the browser and go visit that pull request. And for some reason, it's not keeping it up to date. That pull request was closed days ago, but it used to work. Yeah, I'll get it working again. Let me see if there's other Magit stuff that I use that's Magit related.
There's one thing which is worth mentioning. The Magit blame is actually not just like git blame, but much better because it's recursive. So not only do you see the annotation, which you would normally see in git blame or anything else, but if you actually, I think, hit enter or whatever and go into that, it will take you to that version and then show Magit blame inside that, and you can keep going.
That's nice. Wow, you can really blame people.
Yeah.
There's a Magit iMerge out there, which I've never actually had the need to use, but that could be cool. There's Magit Files. Oh no, that's part of Magit itself.
So which ones are like killer extensions to also use with Magit?
I'd say Magit Hub is probably the most convenient. It makes making pull requests and working with pull requests pretty easy. Other than that, so I'm gonna like give a little pitch here for my own little utility. I have a tool on, it's a Haskell tool, so you install it in Haskell, but I think it's available on a lot of distros called Git Monitor. And what Git Monitor does is, where is Git Monitor?
Do you mean FF monitor?
No, it's here. All right, so what Git Monitor does is it sits in the background, and every 60 seconds it asks, have you done anything? And if you have, it makes a special commit containing those changes. And it keeps it in a kind of a secretive ref space so that you almost can't tell it's there unless you're looking for it. It's been written to be insanely resource efficient because I wanted to be able to have 20 of these running on my laptop and not sacrifice battery. So it actually is using the libgit2 library to keep a tree, a Git tree, partially formed in memory so that when it sees a workspace change, all it does is it diffs that work tree, adds the blob to that tree, writes the new tree, but keeps that tree data structure going. And it just keeps, it's like starter dough, right? It just keeps on growing this thing into the future. And then I have a little shell script called snaplog. And if I say snaplog -p, it knows this ref namespace. And it says, what branch am I in? Let's go look at the snaplog for that branch. Because it keeps, Git monitor will keep its own snap ref space for every branch. And now I'm looking at a 60-second time increment of my workday. Oh.
You guys. You can stop share and start.
Okay. So this is a 60 seconds, and they're all named on when the snapshot was taken. And sometimes, you know, you're rapidly coding and then you're like, oh, that sucks, I'm gonna delete that. Oh wait, that was actually the better way to do it. And oh my gosh, I have to rewrite that. Maybe you saved the file during that time and so Emacs has that backup file. Maybe Time Machine has the version of that file, but you didn't actually save, so it doesn't. The snaps log will have it. And I just page through the diff and I search to find the ref that has it. And I could, of course, I could write a Magit command that would show me the snap log in Magit. I should probably. But anyway, I can't tell you how many times this has saved my bacon. So in Emacs, what I do is that whenever Magit Status runs, when it in the hook, when it's done, it runs Git monitor automatically because I always want it. Runs in the background. So that's the killer feature I use with Magit.
So it's like another ref log in a way, just like a backup.
Yeah, because ref logs only record changes to head or changes to a named ref, but the snap log is recording absolutely everything you do. And because it's all just Git commits, when the command exits and that tree gets flushed out of memory, the next time it runs Git monitor, it just starts over. So those commit objects are still in your repo. They're dangling now and will get garbage collected, but it kind of begins a new snap log. It doesn't try to keep a snap log going forever. I do want some of that garbage to get collected after 30 days. And it's worked out well for me. I've been using that now for 4 years, all the time, and I usually forget that it's there, but every once in a while, I'll want to recover work from a previous iteration, or I will have lost work because this laptop turns itself off when the battery says 35%.
You need a
That's
battery.
sometimes it's good.
Wait, so if you're visiting 20 repos, it's going to load up 20 instances of Git monitor, or just one instance?
Nope, 20 instances.
But you said it was resource.
It's very resource efficient, yeah. And because we all have SSDs nowadays too, it's there's very little that it's doing. If you've changed a file, it's hashing. That's pretty much all that it's doing.
But then if I do a Git branch, then I just have a whole bunch of auto-generated wacky branches that at some point I need to clean up.
Git will clean them up, yeah.
Like Git GC takes a long time before it. Maybe I haven't worked on gigantic repos then.
Yeah, it kind of takes a while. As I said, I've gotten used to some things being kind of slow. But the save the baconness though is worth it to me, whatever it costs, because I also have instructed Emacs to never delete backups and to create backups every time I've typed 1,000 keystrokes. So if I go into my my cache Emacs backups directory, I have only 664. That seems like so little. Usually I have tens of thousands of these files, which are like zillions and zillions and zillions of versions. Something's not.
They're just plain text files, or?
Yeah, these are copies of the source files. Like I have another program that cleans this directory up after 28 days. It might be that because I don't work on my laptop as much, I work on a desktop at home. I have gigabytes and gigabytes basically of source code backups, like thousands and thousands of copies of the file that I'm working on. I don't care.
Right.
It's like,
It's insurance.
yeah, it's 1,000% of my hard drive space, but the one time I need it is the time all of it's worthwhile. And Time Machine running and Backblaze running and everything else. Okay, so I believe yeah, that's it. That's basically all of the major top-level features of Magit. There's a lot of stuff to customize. There are a lot of sub-command features that are all in the manual. Does it all.
Wow, thank you.
Amazing, man.
On that, just to add to the thing you mentioned in the beginning about how it makes a lot of hard Git things easy. One of those things is the ref log. So in Git, a lot of people are scared about, oh, what happens if I do this tree, dangling head, this, then you can inevitably end up on Stack Overflow and finding out the right magic incantations. So here it's like you don't even, it's trivial.
Yeah,
there's magic
the
ref log,
log.
and you can get ref log for any tag, any branch, anything. So you can just see, oh, sure, I have this history. I can just pick up those commits, put them back, replay,
Right.
whatever.
It even nicely colors how the ref changed. What command changed the ref? Which, I mean, git ref log does show you also, but this is pretty colors.
And especially because all the other Magit stuff works here. Hit the thing, see the diff, see the log.
Right. I think if I hit return on here, it will actually
This is a real life, so it would be
commit.
needed.
And then I could be looking at this and say, ooh, I want to edit that.
Can Magit do this kind of stuff with a remote too, though?
This all works over Tramp.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything, it just works?
Yep, it just works because all it's doing is shelling out to Git for all this stuff.
Right.
It's a little bit slower, but it all works.
As long as it works.
Yeah, there's a ticket on the Magit repo now to see if we could use libgit 2 to make some of the common operations in Magit a lot faster. And one of the questions that came up is, well, what do you do about remotes? Because that's a kind of not what everybody uses Magit for, but it's a very sexy use, and it works just because. So what do? Do you use libgit 2 for some things and not for other things? Then what do you do about inconsistency? How do you know to fall back on the old method when you're on the remote?
Out of curiosity, have you ever tried Watchman?
Watchman? What is this?
Oh, so it should speed up your Nix stuff. Before installing it, you should time it just so we can prove it was worth it.
It's a Nix thing?
But I mean, Watchman's a package. It was written by Wes at Facebook.
Ah.
And it was recently put into Git, I think, this year, maybe last year.
All right. Let us add that to my org map.
And Magit is still under active development, right? It's still going forward.
Yeah, Jonas Bernoulli has been working full-time on it for the last year and a half. He got funding from a Kickstarter campaign
Amazing.
and made it his full-time job.
And if you supported him, you got free stickers like this
Well,
not free, I suppose.
Okay. Fair enough.
Question. In the pop-up buffers, it says options and the dash and the equals. What exactly do you do with them? So you can toggle them with, I noticed you can toggle them with just hitting return. But what's the meaning of -G or equals n?
That's what you type. So if I type -G, it will toggle it off.
I see.
That's all.
Does Magit have any kind of intelligence to tell me ahead of time if what the thing I'm going to do is going to cause a conflict?
Not that I know
Git
of.
doesn't have that, so
Yeah.
how do you
Just do it and find out.
Actually, yeah. You can try to do a out of tree. Git has a secret, well, not secret, they're porcelain commands that you can do out of tree merge. So you can morph it to another directory and try to merge and then report that back.
What do you mean when you say porcelain command? What does that mean?
So the philosophy of some of these commands are that they are sink versus porcelain. Like porcelain being the fancy chrome over the sink, and the sink being the plumbing that
Oh,
makes it work. And so the output of the sink or plumbing commands are machine read. They're not for humans.
gotcha.
And like so they're not in tab complete or anything like that.
Oh.
But you can use those commands if you know what you're doing. Want to do something like that.
Oh.
That's how Bitbucket generates the preview of the merge pull request.
Uh-huh.
We give you a preview of it, and so
You can see ahead of time.
you have to do that somehow.
Huh.
So that's how it's implemented.
Thank you.
Can we get something like this for Mercurial, do you think?
Yeah, I can. I actually implemented it and put it in Mercurial. So yes,
Oh, I mean like a Magit kind of.
I also implemented that. Yes, but it's not. It's half there. There's a lot of hard-coded things in Magit that are they don't make sense in Mercurial.
Okay.
And well, time.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I have one other thing. There was, let's say you have this situation where somebody VC'd some binary file from way back when and commit to, and now it's like commit 1,000. And now I want to get rid of it, and usually I would do --cache, completely get rm --cache, completely get it out. So what would be the fastest way to do this in here? It would be in that rebase screen, and then like fix up the commit, or like how do I get rid of this thing completely? Can I have like some kind of quick abstraction over that, like get rid of this file and you figure it out, and replay the history afterwards, like, you know.
So you want to do filter tree, basically.
I want to get rid of
Filter
a
branch.
file that was committed and never have a trace of it.
Yeah, so there is no Magit UI to filter branch.
I see. So at that point, would you then fall back
Command
to the
line git.
command line?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So how much is Magit covering of the Git API, you'd say, roughly?
Oh, that's a good question. I really don't know. I don't know. I can't quantify the entire space of what you can do with Git to say what Magit's doing. In terms of Porcelain that's accessible to you, the high-level commands, it's a pretty decent coverage. Things like filter branch are missing, but by and large, all the main top-level commands are there.
Mm.
In terms of the plumbing, then you're getting access to it through some of these sub options that Magit is making available to you. But I'm sure there's a ton that's down there that you don't have direct access to. Like in Porcelain, you can just make a blob. You can just add a blob object to your Git repository that's not owned by any tree or any commit or anything. It's just going to be a dangling blob, but you'll know it's hash. I don't think you can do that from Magit.
Actually, another thing, does Magit have any kind of abstraction to show me, you know, Git, I feel is bad about file changes, like the name of the file change? Does Magit have anything to?
It'll show you file changes, yeah.
No, the name of the file change as we went through the history as well. Because like, I want to replace TIG as well, and TIG has at least a decent way to.
Yeah, it'll show you the old name and then it equals and then a greater than and then the.
But nothing more interesting or.
No, and if you're interested in some more of the how the plumbing relates to the Porcelain, an article that I wrote to help me really learn how Git worked is called Git from the Bottom Up. So this is now about 9 years old, but it's people tell me it's still relevant. This was for like Git 1.3, but it just basically takes you from the absolute bottom and has you make your own blob and your own tree and your own commit all from the ground up so that you can understand what is the data architecture inside Git, what do ref names really mean, how do branches really represent themselves inside Git, and it evolves up to the Porcelain that's around it all and how it connects.
I see. Your article does it in code?
I show you the commands.
Oh.
So, you know, we have terminology, and then I also use graphics to try and show what's going on, like when you're rebasing. So we start with talking about blobs, and then we talk about trees, and then we go to commits. More on trees. Trees are very important. Commits, and then you know how commits relate to each other, and that creates the tree. and then refs, and rebasing, various topics.
Nothing special with Magit and LFS, right?
This
All
was
the same.
long before either of those existed.
No, I mean in general. In general, Magit and Git LFS, nothing extra to know or special.
There is somewhere out on the web an LFS plugin for Magit, I believe. It gives, yeah, there's Magit LFS, which gives you a key command to access push-pull and your various LFS commands. There's also a Magit plugin for Git Annex. If you use Git Annex to store lots of data relative to your repository. I wonder if there's a Magit plugin for Git Crypt, or if that's all just automatic. No, not anything in particular.
Easy.
Something.
Yeah.
I'm learning it. I know very, very little about it. I started learning it on the command line and didn't like it and couldn't continue and forgot about it. Now you're refreshing my memories from way back. And the way I'm understanding it so far is that what Magit has done is that it changes the abstraction, the abstraction interface that you have with Git. I mean, after you use Magit, you see Git differently.
That's possible. It does give you a more consistent way to interact with Git.
Right, and Emacs allows that.
Emacs is a great tool for building UIs of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, these two packages have a very special relationship with each other, and the package and Git. I need to know, are there more examples of such relationships between Emacs and other packages?
External to Emacs.
Computers, Emacs and computers.
Which one?
I mean, Emacs just has so many cool killer packages like this one.
Okay, right. So this relationship that I'm detecting is not unique to Magit at all.
No.
Wow.
No.
Interesting.
It's a very powerful environment.
How is like this is more about you mentioning Magit Hub? Have you found that plugin helpful or with
Plugin?
with GitHub the Magit?
Magit Hub?
Yeah.
Only to quickly jump to a pull request.
Okay.
That's all.
Thanks.
I haven't used all of its features. You're supposed to be able to do other things, like edit details about the pull request there in the Magit buffer, but I haven't really used them too much.
Cool.
I think
You
they
can
do
browse
more.
issues.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, it's good. It's good. Don't get me wrong.
It's better than nothing.
Yes, right. And I think right now they're ripping it apart into core themes,
Oh, that'd be kind of neat.
so you can use it with your own GitLab,
Ah, sure, that would make sense.
Bitbucket.
Anything that has pull requests and issues.
Yeah.
All right, well, go forth and make your commits.